You have to understand the kind of hour this is, because the title is not speaking about delay, it is speaking about arrival. Something large is moving toward you this month, and the first thing it touches is not your circumstances, but your attention. You have felt the difference between an ordinary day and a day that seems to stand still for a second before it continues. You have felt that pause when the room is the same, the chair is the same, the light is the same, and yet your spirit knows that something has entered the field. This is why the message reaches you now and not later. It is not trying to entertain you. It is trying to wake the part of you that has been waiting without a name for what it was waiting for. You may have called it pressure, but it could be preparation. You may have called it longing, but it could be a door getting ready to open. Stay with this, because what is coming is not small, and your heart needs time to recognize its own doorstep. The weight of expectation has been sitting in your body longer than you admitted. It shows up in the way you hold the phone a little too long, in the way you stare at a message after reading it, in the way your shoulders lower when the house finally becomes quiet. You know that strange moment when you are standing in the kitchen or by the window and you realize you are tired in a place deeper than muscles. The body keeps score when the spirit has been listening for a promise. Some days you have looked fine on the outside while your chest felt crowded on the inside, as if something in you was being stretched before it had language. That is not failure. That is the human shape of readiness. There are moments when silence is not emptiness, but a space being cleared. There are moments when the delay you felt was not rejection, but room being made. The pressure you have carried may be the sign that your life is not closing down. It may be opening. What is happening around you is not random, and what is stirring in you is not a mistake. The pattern has been speaking through ordinary things, because that is how heaven often touches a life that is still learning how to listen. A closed door, a sudden interruption, a conversation that fell apart, a restlessness that did not leave. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuzazara readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. When you distracted yourself, all of that may be part of a larger mercy. You are not being asked to invent meaning out of thin air. You are being asked to notice what keeps returning. By the end of this, you will recognize the difference between noise and signal, between pressure and preparation, between an old fear and a new invitation. You will see why some things could not stay the way they were. You will understand why the ache was never only an ache. It was a kind of announcement. And the announcement was not saying you were forgotten. It was saying you were being called closer. Think about the room where you've been sitting with your thoughts lately, maybe late at night, with the lamp on low and the rest of the house asleep. Think about the small objects that keep watching you from the table. The cup that went cold. The notebook that stayed open, the clean clothes folded but not put away. It is often in those plain places that the truth becomes hardest to ignore. You can hear a clock there. You can hear your own breath there. You can hear how many times you have postponed the same inner conversation. The scene looks ordinary, but your spirit knows it is not ordinary anymore. Something inside you has been turning toward a future that has not fully arrived yet. That turning has changed the atmosphere. It has changed how you answer people. It has changed how you sit in silence. It has changed what you can no longer pretend not to feel. That is why the moment matters. A life does not always announce its turning with trumpets. Sometimes it begins with a chair, a lamp, and the quiet certainty that the old way of seeing is no longer enough. You have been more sensitive than people around you, and that sensitivity has not made you weak. It has made you harder to deceive. You sense when a room is off before anyone says a word. You sense when a smile is covering strain. You sense when your own heart is trying to call something normal that is actually unfinished. That kind of awareness can feel lonely because you cannot always prove it to anyone else. But discernment often feels lonely before it feels clear. You are not imagining the difference. You are not being dramatic because you notice what others skip over. You are carrying a responsibility to recognize what is shifting. The cost of that responsibility is that you cannot live on autopilot anymore. The gift of it is that you are being spared from a life that would have fit your habits, but not your calling. When sensitivity is purified, it stops being anxiety and starts becoming sight. What felt like too much may be exactly enough to keep you from missing what matters next. The first resistance came in the form of distraction, because distraction is often the easiest way to keep a soul from naming what it knows. Your day can fill itself with small urgencies, with messages, with errands, with the constant nudge to look elsewhere, and by nightfall you are tired without knowing why. That is how pressure works when it is not yet understood. It keeps you moving so quickly that you never sit still long enough to hear your own answer. Some of the delay you felt came through people who did not mean harm, but still pulled your attention away from what was forming. Some of it came through your own habit of minimizing the inner alarm. It is easier for a while to call everything ordinary than to admit that your spirit has been standing at a threshold. Yet ordinary does not explain the way your chest tightened in certain conversations. Ordinary does not explain the way your rest became lighter when one burden finally fell away. There is a kind of pressure that is not meant to crush you. It is meant to show you what cannot travel with you anymore. There is a story in Scripture about someone standing in a season where the visible world said one thing and the divine purpose said another, and you know that feeling because you have lived beside it in your own way. Joseph was in a pit and then in a prison, but the pit was not the conclusion, and the prison was not the identity. You have had pit days too, not always dramatic ones. Sometimes the smaller kind, where your hope felt buried under routine and your name felt smaller than your responsibilities. You kept moving, but inwardly, you wondered whether what God had placed in you had been delayed beyond usefulness. That is the part the biblical echo corrects. It says the place that looked like interruption may have been construction. It says a hidden season is not the same as a wasted season. It says the dream can survive the room that cannot yet hold it. And it tells you that what seems like confinement may actually be a place where the meaning is being preserved until the time is right. If you ignore the signal long enough, you do not remain neutral. You start repeating what was already wearing you out. You keep calling it life when it is only habit. You keep calling it peace when it is only numbness. And then the inner noise grows louder because the part of you that knows better is tired of being ignored. That is how cycles continue, not because they are powerful, but because they are familiar. Familiar can feel safer than freedom when you have lived too long in survival. But the cost of staying there is real. It steals the tenderness you need to receive what is coming. It dulls the edge of gratitude. It makes every new door look suspicious. So listen carefully. What is approaching this month is not being sent to overwhelm you. It is being sent to meet you where your yes has already begun. Your life is asking for recognition, not panic. If any of that landed in you, if your breathing changed even a little while you listened, type 888 in the comments. That code is not magic. It is a small sign of overflow, a quiet confirmation that something in you heard the same knock. There is a mercy in naming the moment, because naming the moment stops you from dismissing your own witness. Type 888, then come back to me. Let that simple act mark the place where your attention stopped drifting and began to gather. What follows matters because the pattern is deeper than one sign, and the door that opens in the outside world first opens in the heart that finally admits it is being addressed. Stay with me, because the next layer is not about proving anything. It is about recognizing the root beneath the pattern. You already know that the issue is not only what happens around you, the issue is what rises inside you when something real gets close. The moment a blessing feels near, fear starts asking questions. The moment an answer feels possible, control wants to negotiate the terms. The moment peace begins to settle, the old survival voice says not to trust it yet. That is why the deeper conflict is often hidden inside the response. You can have the right opportunity and still feel the wrong instinct. You can be standing in front of a door and still feel as if you need permission from a past season to enter it. This is where the message becomes more personal. It is not only telling you that something is coming, it is telling you that you must not let the old way of protecting yourself interpret the new way of being led. The next movement is about learning which voice sounds like caution and which voice sounds like fear dressed as caution. The root is often not lack of faith in the large sense. It is the quieter fear of obeying when obedience might change your familiar shape. You know the pull of wanting clarity before movement, when sometimes clarity only comes after movement. You know the temptation to hold on to control, because control has the appearance of wisdom when uncertainty feels expensive. Yet the cost of control is exhaustion, because it makes you responsible for things you were never meant to carry alone. A hand on the wheel all night can look strong and still be trembling. You may have been confusing vigilance with faithfulness. You may have been calling caution mature when it was really protection against disappointment. The root is revealed in the places where your spirit has to keep convincing your mind that peace is not an accident. It is a witness, and once you see that, you can stop punishing yourself for needing to learn trust slowly. Your mind has been busy making explanations, but your body has been telling the truth in another language. The mind says, wait a little longer, check again, think it through, make sure. The body responds with tight shoulders, shallow breathing, restless hands, and that tiredness that makes even good news feel heavy. You have felt both at once, a thought that can justify staying still, and a quiet inner pull that says move. That tension does not mean you are broken. It means you are being taught how to tell discernment from fear. Anxiety spins because it needs to control the future. Discernment grows quieter because it knows the future is not yours to own. In that space, the spirit often speaks without force. It does not shout. It steadies. It does not overwhelm. It aligns. And when those three things disagree inside you, the smallest truthful step is often the one that restores the whole room. Some environments do not hate you, but they still drain you. And that is important to see without suspicion. A table, a conversation, a habit, a room full of familiar noise can become expensive to your peace when they keep asking for a version of you that no longer exists. You leave those spaces tired in a way sleep does not fix. You answer messages and then feel your chest tighten because you know you gave more than you had. That is not you being fragile. That is you becoming precise. There is a difference between loyalty and leakage. There is also a difference between compassion and staying where your spirit is continually emptied. What is being revealed now may be that you do not need to fight every drain with force. You only need to name it honestly, and once it is named, it loses some of its hidden power. The pattern of opposition has been subtle, which is why it has been effective. It does not always arrive as a dramatic attack. Sometimes it arrives as tiredness, then delay, then confusion, then a harmless-looking urge to postpone what your heart already understood. It fills the day with lesser urgencies, so the greater one feels inconvenient. It asks you to answer everything except the thing that matters most. It can even use good intentions to keep you from decisive obedience. That is why you have to watch the way pressure disguises itself. It can wear the face of prudence. It can sound like humility. It can feel like being careful when it is really being held back by fear of change. But the old strategy is losing ground the moment you see it. Awareness is not a small thing. It is often the first crack in the wall. There comes a point when you stop negotiating with what has already been made clear. The body knows it before the mouth does. The chest unclenches in one small moment. The hands stop reaching for explanations. The inner argument gets quieter because it has finally met something stronger than itself. That is the threshold. You can stand at it for a while, but you cannot pretend it is not there. The question shifts from whether the signal is real to whether you will trust what has already been shown. That shift matters because it is where your life stops revolving around hesitation. You begin to understand that surrender is not losing. It is refusing to keep paying for a door that was already opened. The next part of this message stays with one image, so it can teach you more deeply than abstraction ever could. Keep listening for that image, because it will hold the rest of what you need. Imagine a gate that has been covered for a long time. A wooden gate behind vines, quiet in the wind, waiting without making noise. You have stood near gates like that before, not always physical ones. Sometimes the unseen kind that separates one season of the soul from another. The covered gate does not look dramatic at first. It just looks neglected, hidden, almost forgotten. But when the light changes and the leaves start to move, you realize the gate was not dead. It was waiting. That is how this season feels. What covered the gate was not proof that nothing was there. It was proof that something was protected from premature crossing. You may have been irritated by the waiting, but the waiting was never empty. It was preserving the shape of what was going to matter later. Your spirit recognizes the gate because it has been standing beside it in silence longer than your mind knew how to count. The gate has formed a language with the weather, with dust, with the sound of footsteps passing by and not stopping. You have known that language in your own life, in the days when you looked stable on the outside but felt sealed on the inside. A gate like this does not fail because it is closed. It serves because it knows when to hold and when to release. That is why some delays were not punishments. They were protection against a crossing that would have been too early, too costly, or too unsteady. The vines around the gate are like the habits you grew around your own heart, useful for a time, then overgrown. They kept out what should not enter, but they also made it harder to see what was true. So the message is not only that the gate exists, it is that the season of covering is nearing its turn. The thing that was hidden is not being denied forever, it is being readied. There were forces that wanted the gate to remain unseen, because unseen things are easier to neglect and easier to doubt. Distraction acts like weeds around a fence. Fear acts like rust on the latch. Comparison walks by and tells you the gate is probably for someone else. False urgency pounds at the wood and says, "Open now, as if the timing belonged to pressure instead of wisdom. Yet the gate remains, and the fact that it remains matters. You are not the first to stand before something covered and wonder if you missed your chance. But missing your chance is not the same as waiting under care. The opposition wants you to read silence as absence. The truth is that silence can be a shield. It can keep a thing from being forced. It can keep your own heart from being rushed into a version of itself it is not ready to carry. So do not be embarrassed by the covering. It has been doing work you could not yet see. Something begins to move at the gate when the wind changes and the vines loosen just enough to let the outline appear. You notice the shape first, then the hinge, then the old latch, then the fact that it is not sealed the way you thought it was. That movement is subtle, but subtle does not mean insignificant. It means the change is happening in a way that can survive your hands when they finally touch it. Your shoulders may drop when this dawns on you, because part of you has been bracing against the possibility that everything real would arrive with force. It does not always arrive with force. Sometimes it arrives with permission. Sometimes it arrives with timing. Sometimes it arrives with a quietness that feels almost too gentle until you realize that gentleness is what makes it trustworthy. The gate is not rushing you. It is teaching you how to recognize readiness. And if the image of that covered gate is landing in you, type the words "Eu vejo isso" in the comments. Let that recognition settle where it belongs, because naming what you see keeps you from living as if you never saw it at all. Come back to me after you write it, and stay with the feeling that not every delay was denial. Some delays were the mercy that kept the gate from opening under strain. What is moving now is not a fantasy. It is the first shift of a long-held threshold. And the rest of this message will show you how to live on the side of the gate that is opening instead of the side that keeps rehearsing the old weight. The next thing you need is not more noise. It is a cleaner way of staying present when the gate begins to open. Morning becomes different when you wake and do not rush to prove anything before your feet touch the floor. The room is still the same, but your breathing is slower, and you can tell that something in you has stopped bargaining with the day before it even starts. That is where the return begins. It is not dramatic. It is a hand on the blanket, a window cracked open, a first prayer spoken without performance. You are learning how to live from peace instead of chasing it. And when peace becomes the place you stand, the gate stops feeling like a threat. It starts feeling like direction. That direction is not about being flashy. It is about being faithful in the small motions that keep you aligned with what is opening. One practice now is to begin the day with a quiet seal, not as a ritual of control, but as a way of acknowledging what matters before anything else competes for you. Sit for a moment before the phone speaks first. Let the first words you give the day be simple and clean. This practice does not force an outcome. It prepares your attention. It says that your life will not be ruled by the loudest alert. It also teaches your body that you do not need to rush to become ready. In that stillness, the gate is less mysterious because you are less scattered. The first breath becomes a kind of consent. The first pause becomes a kind of wisdom. And what you protect at dawn often protects you all day. Another practice is to check the room of your heart before you answer the world. Notice what expands peace and what drains it. Notice which thought makes your shoulders ease and which thought makes them hard again. This is not overthinking. This is stewardship. You do not need to interrogate every feeling, but you do need to notice what leaves you clearer and what leaves you tangled. The gate opens safely when the ground around it is not cluttered with old debris. So clear one thing. Release one unnecessary weight. Leave one conversation for later, if later is wiser. The small act of choosing peace is not small at all. It is the way you cooperate with what is being opened without forcing it. When the gate stands open, you do not need to prove your worth by sprinting through it. You only need to walk honestly. There are limits now that are not punishment, and pauses now that are not failure. They are boundaries of mercy. The hand that once kept you waiting may have been keeping you from rushing into a room that could not yet hold your full honesty. That is why protection sometimes looks like a closed latch. It keeps what is tender from being exposed before it is ready. The old interpretation said the pause meant absence. The new interpretation says the pause may have meant care. You are not being kept back because you are unworthy. You are being guided because the opening matters. What changes now is the way you spend your strength. You stop giving the best of yourself to what cannot receive it. You stop explaining the gate to people who only want to tell you it was never there. You become a steward of the next step, not a performer of the old anxiety. There is relief in that because your life was never meant to be a constant emergency. It was meant to be a guided crossing. And once you know that, the noise loses authority. The whisper of direction becomes enough. The gate is not asking for your panic. It is asking for your presence. That is how you know you are moving in the right direction, because what once exhausted you now teaches you how to walk. Let your like be your amen without words if something in this has confirmed what your spirit already knew, not as a metric, as an agreement that the gate was named correctly and that your heart recognizes the way it is opening. Let that quiet gesture stand for the part of you that no longer wants to argue with truth, and then come back to me, because there is someone else carried inside this moment with you, and the message is not only for your own private recognition, it is also meant to travel. There is someone in your life whose face has been near your mind while I have been speaking, someone quietly tired, someone carrying a posture nobody sees, someone working hard while feeling unseen. You know that person because you have watched strength cover strain in their voice or silence. You have seen them answer with "I'm fine" when you could feel the sentence was heavier than that. This is not a random memory. It is part of the delivery. Send this to them as care, not as a recommendation, not as content, not as a passing thought. Give it the way water is given to someone who has been walking too long under sun. Sometimes the right message reaches a person because one heart remembered to pass it on. And if their face came to mind, that is already a kind of appointment. The gate does not only open for one life in isolation. It opens in a way that lets you recognize who else is standing nearby in need of the same mercy. Before this closes, write the words "I am chosen" in the comments. Do not treat it like a wish. Treat it like confirmation. The words matter because they name the identity that has been forming through the whole path, from the first sign to the quiet opening to the turn in your inner posture. There is a difference between hoping you belong and confessing that you are being held in belonging. Type it slowly. Let your fingers do what your spirit has already begun to do. This is not a performance for anyone else. It is a seal on your own hearing, and when you write it, you are not inventing a new self. You are agreeing with what has been returning to you all along. Come back to me after you write it, and let the next sentence carry you into the peace that follows agreement. Everything has been pointing toward this. The signal, the ache, the resistance, the gate, the opening, the steadier breath. You can look back now and see that the confusion was not meaningless, because it taught you how to distinguish false urgency from true invitation. You can see that the pressure was not only pressure because it exposed the places where control had replaced trust. You can see that the silence was not empty because it held a protected thing until your hands were ready to receive it. That is why the image of the gate matters so much. It gathered the scattered parts of your story into one scene that your heart could finally hold. The covered thing was not dead. The hidden thing was not lost. The waiting thing was not ignored. It was being readied for a season that had not yet arrived. And now, because you have listened, the whole movement begins to make sense in your bones. You are being confirmed in ways that do not need to shout to be real. You are being remembered in places where you once felt overlooked. You are not late, even if the old clock in your mind keeps trying to accuse you. You are not abandoned, even if the room went quiet for longer than you wanted. You are being returned to what was always yours to receive in peace, not in panic. You are being taught to stand without forcing, to wait without shrinking, to open without fear. Right now, across many places and many private rooms, others are hearing their own quiet recognition too, and the same mercy is meeting them in ways only they can name. You are part of something that does not need to announce itself loudly in order to be true. You are not isolated in this hour. You are held within it. Walk gently, keep the peace that has been restoring your breath, and receive what is coming with open hands. Estás selado. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.